Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Beruchim Abayim. Welcome everyone. We are continuing on Masechet Makkot. And we are on the bottom of Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Amar Rabbi Abahu. Today's Amud is being learned as a zchut for the neshama of Esther bat Naftali Tzvi Levi by our own Mark Abraham. Should be aliyah for her neshama, and also as a zchut for Yehuda ben Esther and Anael bat Zipora. Yimalach Shem kol nishalot libam letovah. It's been by the Kashanian family. This month's learning of the Kila has been sponsored by the Dayan family, by Kohen family, by Shea family. Should be an ultimate zchut for all of their families, Be'ezrat Hashem as well. Amen. Today's learning has been dedicated also for the refuah shelema of Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, that should have a full recovery. Refuah shelema. Amen. So we started yesterday the famous Gemara from Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav that kilelat chacham afilu bechinam. When a chacham does a klala, wishes bad on someone, even if it's baseless, it will come. This was, of course, built on the platform of the previous Gemara right before that, that normally speaking, at Tfilat Shav, when you daven for someone's negativity, when you curse somebody and there's no reason for it, the Pasuk says, Katzipor lanud kaderor lauf ken kilelat chinam lo tavo. A kilelat chinam will never take effect. That was the whole base of the Gemara for Kohanim, that people who went to the cities of refuge, to the sanctuary cities, would daven for them to die, and the Gemara says, let them daven. What happens? And the Gemara says, no, this actually is not bechinam, because it was the responsibility of the Kohen Gadol. A leader has responsibility for his people, and the Kohen Gadol has responsibility for the entirety of Klal Yisrael. So he should have davened for them, and he didn't. So therefore, he is guilty as charged, so to speak, and therefore, if they do daven for him, that klala could actually take hold. Hence, the mothers of Kohanim would run around the cities of refuge, or miklat, to see to it that these people are comfortable and they're not davening for their sons to die. So then the Gemara says that's only for a regular klala. Kilelat chacham afilu bechinam. And the Gemara gives an example of David and Achitofel. That when David was laying foundation for the Beit HaMikdash to be built, he was digging in Shittin, and the natural resources of water was coming up. And again, the Beit HaMikdash, the area of Har HaBayit is elevated, so if water is pouring out, based on the physics, is going to fill up, and the flood caused by that could damage and kill many, and therefore he needed to save the situation. He asked for whoever knows if it's mutar to erase a Shem HaMeforash over there, and the rest was history by Achitofel. So that was an example of Kilelat Chinam, that even though that Achitofel ended up telling him the halacha, still the Klala of David HaMelech, Yechanek, was established and came through with Achitofel at the end of his life. He hung himself, and that's how his life was ended. Now the Gemara says something very similar. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Abahu, 3 lines up. Kilelat chacham afilu al tenai hi ba'a. A kilala of a chacham, even on condition, is going to come through. Now what's the difference, al tenai and bechinam? What's bechinam, what's al tenai? We'll just come back to this question in just a moment. The Gemara gives an example. Menalan, me'eli, Eli Kohen, the Rebbe and the mentor of Shmuel HaNavi, the one that promised Hannah, the mother of Shmuel, after 19 and a half years of being barren and not having children, and when she was crying in the scene of the Mishkan, and he says, Elokei Israel, Hashem will give you shelatech asher sha'at be'imo, the tefillah that you davened from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to have a child. That was Eli Kohen. And then as soon as Shmuel was ready to learn, as a little kid, he was given over to Eli to grow up as a disciple, as a Talmid of Eli HaKohen. So he is his Rebbe and father figure for him. And the Pasuk says that Eli's children, unfortunately, were not like himself at all. They went off the path. They did the wrong things. They misused their power. They took bribe. It was not a good situation. Even though that Eli HaKohen was a tremendous tzaddik, his sons were not. Now, Shmuel HaNavi had a negative prophecy about the household of Eli, and he was very uncomfortable. He did not want to tell him the prophecy that he had, and Eli knew that he has had some vision, and he wanted him to say it, and he gave him a wording that sounds like a negative wording of a klala al tenai. He says, I want you to tell me, and ko yaseh Hashem v'cho yosif. Let's take a look at the pasuk. It says, ko yaseh lecha Elokim v'cho yosif im techached mimeni davar. Hashem should do such and such to you if you withhold any information from me. I want you to tell me exactly what your prophecy about my household was. And the pasuk goes on to say that Shmuel actually told him everything. Didn't drop any details. V'afal gav the chtiv, last line, even though that it says that actually Shmuel told him everything afterwards. V'yaget lo Shmuel et kol hadevarim v'lo kichet mimenu. He told him over the entire prophecy and he didn't withhold any information. Still, v'afilu achi ktiv v'lo halchu banav bidrachav. With all of that, the negativity that Eli had mentioned came upon Shmuel, even though Shmuel was a tremendous personality. But a negative word that leaves the mouth of a chacham, that's how chachamim yizaru b'divrechem. They have to be very careful what they say, what they not say. Because he said, Ko yaseh Hashem v'cho yosif. And the Rishonim explain over here, that's not a klala, but if you take a look, it says, Hashem should do such and such. What such and such? He doesn't say what, but if you take a look at the right before that, the previous perek, towards the end of the previous perek, it says these pasuk that the sons of Eli did not follow his path. And right afterwards, it has this nevuah that Shmuel had, and that kind of like followed with the klala that he had. So what happened was, the klala of Eli took effect on Shmuel's children, and Shmuel's children at the end of his life, the pasuk says, Lo halchu bidrachav, the sons of Shmuel also did not follow the pathway of Shmuel in that way either. The pasuk says about him, I read the entire pasuk, Vayatu acharei abasa, vayichu shochad, vayitu mishpat. They also were tilted after their own private benefits. They accepted bribery and they tilted the judgments for people, so they became kind of like people like the sons of Eli HaKohen, and that's kilelat chacham afilu al tenai. Now the mefarshim ask, what's the difference between kilelat chinam and kilelat al tenai? Kilelat chacham afilu bechinam. Okay. One of them is a baseless klala, the other one is a conditional klala. Both of them will come, but the stories are almost identical. Both of these stories the Gemara brings is they were cursed if they don't say information. And they both ended up saying them. So either call both of them Kilelat Chinam, or call both of them Kilala Al Tanai, right? Both by David and Achitophel, and also by Eli HaKohen and Shmuel. So I believe the Ben Ish Chai explains it as follows. He says, the Maharsha speaks about this as well. He says, if you pay attention to the story of David HaMelech and Achitophel, it was not al tenai, because Achitophel did not know the halacha at the moment that the klala was given. If you take a look at the story, Achitophel said, well, okay, if you really push me, I could try to figure this out. It should be a kal vachomer. That's how, it's not that at the moment he knew. So when he gave the klala, there was nobody that really was thinking about what the halacha should be of erasure of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name for saving the flood. But by case of Eli, Shemuel Hanavi knew what he was told. He just was not going to say it because he was uncomfortable saying the bad news to Eli, right? So therefore, it was al tenai. The other one was not al tenai. It's not that I know that if I don't tell, I don't know. But if you're pressing me, so then I could try to figure out what the halacha should be based on the 13 principles that we are taught to learn the Torah with. So therefore, they are very different. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. We spoke about Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav before, that kilelat chacham afilu bechinam. Now he says also nidui al tenai sarich hafara. If someone puts another person in nidui, if a person ends up being in excommunication in nidui, even if it is al tenai, still you need hafara. Still you need to nullify that nidui. Menalan mi Yehuda. How do we know that? We know it from Yehuda, because Yehuda had a very interesting situation in which he put himself into a conditional excommunication. How so? They wanted to go to Egypt and take produce back. They were all starving. They went once with the brothers, without Binyamin, of course, because Yaakov would not, under any circumstances, send his son Binyamin on a way with him, because A, he didn't trust them. B, he felt that the Rachel and her children, they didn't have a good mazal on the way. Rachel died on the way. Yosef died on the way when he sent him off to Shechem, right? So he said, I'm not sending this one. And he felt, Yaakov Avinu felt that he had only one wife. Contrary to what we think, that it was 4 wives, or it was 2 wives and 2 concubines. It was not like that. In his mind, is Shnaim Yaldadi Ishti. Rachel was the wife. The rest of them were there. So he said, I'm not sending the only child that I have left with you guys on a path. So they were stuck, because Yosef, the viceroy, who they didn't know was Yosef, he had said, do not see my face without your youngest brother with you. Do not come back. Don't even bother. Right? So they couldn't go without him. They couldn't go with him because Yaakov wouldn't let. Reuben tried his luck, and Yaakov said, you are crazy. He said words, says, you kill my 2 sons if I don't bring back Binyamin. Right? And Yaakov kind of did not trust Reuben altogether, until Yehuda was the king of the brother, the most responsible, the leading figure in the Shvatim. He spoke up and he said, I take full responsibility. Put this child, Binyamin, he had 10 children at the time, Binyamin, but it says, give him to me, I'll take him, I'll bring him back, I'll take full responsibility. If I don't bring him back, v'chatati lecha kol hayamim, I will be a sinner to you, kol hayamim, all of the days. That means in my lifetime and even after death. He put himself in a situation of excommunication if he does not bring him back, both in olam hazeh and in olam haba. Right? Chatati lecha kol hayamim. If I don't bring him back. So that is a nidui al tenai, a self-imposed conditional excommunication. That's what Yehuda did. Now, we know this story. The rest of the story is amazing, right? He took Binyamin with him. Yosef wanted to hold him back as a slave, right? He wanted to test the temperature of the brothers and see what they do. And of course, Yehuda took full responsibility. Vayigash elav Yehuda. He said, either keep me here or send him back, or I'll kill you, I'll get killed. It was, the drama that we know in Parashat Vayigash is the rest of the story. But he brought him back, of course, right? So it says, the pasuk, Dichtivim, Lo avi oti velecha. If I don't bring him back to you, says Yehuda, Anochi arvenu, I will guarantee him. Miyadi tibakshenu, from my hand you should seek him back. Im lo avi oti velecha, if I don't bring him back to you, v'yisaktiv lefanecha, and I don't stand him whole and healthy in front of you, v'chatati lecha kol hayamim, I will be sinner to you all of my days. V'amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, third line, Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani told in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, my dichtiv, what does it say? Yechi Reuben v'al yamud. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu, this is many, many years, hundreds of years later, right? After the death of Yehuda, right? This is, the Shibud of Mitzrayim started after the death of the brothers. And he had 210 years of Mitzrayim, Redu Shama, and then you had the Geulah and the 40 years in the Midbar. And towards the end, when Moshe Rabbeinu is giving the blessings to the Shvatim, he says this pasuk: Yechi Reuben ve'al yamot. Reuben should live and not die. It's a very strange pasuk, and the Gemara is going to ask and pick up on the strange element in the pasuk. Vehi metav mispar. Ve'zot liYehuda, and immediately afterwards says, and this should be for Yehuda. Vayomar Shema Hashem kol Yehuda. Hashem listened to the voice of Yehuda. Ve'el amot evienu, and bring him back to his nation. Yadav rav lo, his hands should be strong for him. Ve'ezer mitzarav tiyeh, and he should win over his enemies. What's the kesher? Ma kesher. What's the connection between Reuben, Yechi Reuben ve'al yamot, that Reuben should live and not die? Ve'zot Yehuda, and this should be for Yehuda. Shema Hashem kol Yehuda. Hashem listened to you. Whoa, what's going on? Says the Gemara, every part of this is coming to say one message. What is this pasuk saying? And then it juxtaposes to it Vezot Yehuda. Kol otan mem shana, says Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani in the name of Rabbi Yonatan. All of the 40 years in the Midbar that the Shvatim, their coffins were brought back from Mitzrayim, right? It was not just Yosef that they took. Yosef was taken by Moshe Rabbeinu. That was a hard job because it was hidden. But the Shvatim, they brought them out. But all the 40 years that the Jews were in the Midbar, Atzmotav shel Yehuda ayu mekulkalin be'aron. The bones of Yehuda were not in order. They were all broken, from the structure of a skeleton. They're all like roaming around the coffin. It was a very disgraceful situation. At She'amad, this is ba'olam hazeh. This is in this world, right? His body, so to speak, was not in peace because of this word that he said about himself, right? At She'amad Moshe ubikesh alav rachem, until Moshe Rabbeinu asked for mercy for him. The bones of all the other Shvatim were not like that. The structure was kept. The body was intact. Yehuda was not. Until Moshe Rabbeinu asked for rachamim. Amar lefanav, ribono shel olam. Mi garam leReuben sheyodeh. Yehuda was a role model. He was a great personality. If it wasn't because of Yehuda, Reuben would never admit publicly to his sin. Because Yehuda had the leadership and the confidence and the sitkut to say Sadka mimeni, to publicly do tshuva, everyone learned from him, and Reuben right away immediately afterwards also did the same thing. And now that because of Yehuda, Reuben is part of the 12 Shvatim, otherwise it would be counted out. It's not fair that Reuben should be part and Yehuda shouldn't. Without Yehuda, Reuben would not even be there. Right? So it's like a Kal Vachomer type of thing. Hashem, you got to bring him back in. Says the Gemara, Vezot Yehuda, because of the Zot Yehuda, the Reuben who is now alive should be a reason for Yehuda to be also back in place. Shema Hashem kol Yehuda. So says the Gemara, Al Evareh Shafa. Says the Gemara, the bones of Yehuda were restructured, and now it took the proper structure, like the other Shvatim, that their body was the bones were intact. So this was in Olam Hazeh, kind of like he was good now. Says the Gemara, Lo hava kam ha'ilileh lemetifta derakia, but his neshama still was not allowed. Can you imagine this? Yehuda, one of the Shvatim, the one that built the Bet Midrash and the yeshiva in Mitzrayim before they even came, he was not allowed in the yeshiva shel Mala, in the yeshiva of the neshamot up there. And then Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ve'el amot tevienu, you have to let him back to his nation. I said, fine, they let him in. Lo hava kayada lemishkal ulmitra. He didn't know how to handle in the yeshiva to deliver a discussion of the Torah, b'shematatam, in the learning. He didn't know how to learn. Be'hadei Rabbanan, with the other Chachamim in Yeshiva Shel Ma'ala. Yadav Ravlo. Moshe Rabbeinu davens further. His hands should be strong. He should be able to handle himself and learn in Yeshiva Shel Ma'ala. But he still could not answer questions and win over his case, and says the final part of that pasuk, ve'ezer mitzarav tiyeh, that he should be able to be successful in his learning, and that's when Yehuda was kind of like allowed back in Yeshiva Shel Ma'ala. So therefore, the Gemara is saying that Yehuda, even though that he promised and he delivered, because he put himself in nidui, a kilelat chacham, even though that the chidush over here is, even though that it's himself, it's a self-imposed, he doesn't hate himself, but even if you open your mouth for yourself for negativity, you put yourself in a conditional nidui, you have to bear the responsibility of what follows. So says the Gemara, Ibailehu. Now,
but how does this make sense? Because every single time these guys are fulfilling the condition. If they didn't fulfill, okay, fine, they get the.
That's exactly the point. The Gemara says when you open your mouth, it shows you. It's a good question. It shows you the power of words. A person's words are the greatest power that he has because they are the expression of neshama, and the neshama of a person is the greatest force in this world. Period. As a nuclear power. We are not used to viewing our words and our power of speech like that. When the pasuk says, "Vaypach ba'afav nishmat chayim, v'tiyeh adam lenefesh chaya," a famous targum that says, "Ruach memalela." The neshama's expression is the speech that we have, and according to the Zohar Kadosh, every word that you say, you have stapled to it the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's a tremendous power. Now, if you have a chacham, if you have a wise man, that his words are measured, and he speaks, clear and methodically thought through words. If now he uses his words that have that potent, that amazing power, the words are going to make a roshem, even if it's al tanai. Once the words come out, that energy that has been created and put into action is not going to be completely nullified easily. So it's actually a musar, how careful a person should be with his words. That's the take-home message. So says the Gemara, back to our last few lines of the Mishnah, back to Kohen Gadol and the people in Arei Miklat. We mentioned 3/4 different types of Kohanim that their death would be a cause for the Rotzeach to get out of Arei Miklat and go back home. Now the Gemara says, well, you need all of the 3 to die? Or either one of them is enough, right? So you have a Kohen Gadol, you have a Kohen she'avar m'shichuto, you have a Kohen Mashruach Milchama, you have maximum, you could have 3 of them, all 3 of them. Sometimes you could only have 1, right? Sometimes you don't have a second Kohen Gadol that has worked for a day, right? You remember, that's the second Kohen is a Kohen Gadol that was appointed because the actual main Kohen Gadol was Tameh when he had to serve in Yom Kippurim, and this guy became a Kohen Gadol, filled in for the Kohen Gadol, so to speak, for 1 day or for 1 week until the Kohen Gadol was back on track. So you could have 2 Kohanim Gedolim, or you could only have 1, right? And then you have Kohen Mashruach Milchama. In the times the Jews went to war, he had Mashruach Milchama also. So you could have 1, 2, or 3 high priests, so to speak. So all 3 of them should die, or any one of them that dies. Which one is it? So says the Gemara, Tashma. Let me bring a raya. Nigmar dino belo Kohen Gadol. We're going to have this Mishnah, right in the Mishnah that we're going to start next, that if a person stood trial and his verdict came out without any Kohen Gadol, At the time that they paskined his case, they gave the verdict, there was no Kohen Gadol. The previous Kohen Gadol had died, and they're in process of appointing who is going to be the next Kohen Gadol. And meanwhile, without Kohen Gadol, this guy got his verdict. What happens? What do you think happens? He will never go out of Arei Miklat. He will live and die and be buried there forever, right? So, Eno yotze misham leolam, the Mishnah is going to say, right? Ve'im ita, and if you want to tell me, lehtar b'dehanach, you should go back with the other ones. If you tell me that any of the three would let him go, so then let him. Why does he have to stay there forever? You didn't have Kohen Gadol, but you have Kohen Mashruach Milchama. The says no. The Mishnah is talking about the case that he didn't have a Kohen Mashruach Milchama. There was no high priest at the time that his verdict came out. And Achinami, if you had Kohen Mashruach Milchama, it would be hinging on the death of the Kohen Mashruach Milchama, the one in charge of warfare, or the Kohen She'avar Mimeshichuto. So that basically concludes the Mishnah, the previous Gemara. Now the next Mishnah is going to be a very interesting one also. When exactly is going to be the time that this person gets off the hook from Arei Miklat? What happens if he stood trial and the Kohen Gadol died in the middle of trial, right? What happens if he stood trial and he got his verdict, and 2 seconds later, before he even got to go to Arei Miklat, the Kohen Gadol died? Does he get lucky, or does he still have to go there and come back? What happens if he got accused, he stood trial, the Kohen Gadol died, and then they appointed a new Kohen Gadol, and then he got his verdict? Well, does he have to wait now for the second Kohen Gadol or not? Those are all items that Be'ezrat Hashem we're going to discuss in the upcoming Mishnah. Hazak Baruch.